What's the difference between Apple and Microsoft? Two companies which provide smart devices to people throughout the world. The difference is leisure versus business. Microsoft is established and will continue to expand all their functionality around devices with a strong battery life and is focused on creating a product that is well rounded in all fields and not just for leisure. Whereas Apple is a product that is not very well rounded, but is very strong at making things that connect people to others and not really worried about how well they're made. And that's why I propose that Microsoft's features are a more viable option for the business world than Apple. All of us have our own opinion on both products, and throughout our lifetime, our age group will continue to be the sect that decides which product the world will run on. So today I will be evaluating my proposition by dividing my terms, narrowing my argument, and presenting applications in support of my proposition. First, I must define what I mean when I say software and smart devices. For the purposes of this speech, I'll be defining the word software as the way smart devices are built for storing, creating, and using information. And smart devices are any kind of smart device that are created either by Apple or Microsoft. Now that I've given definitions, it is important that I set the thresholds for what I mean when I use the word specifically software and smart device. I will be considering throughout this discussion that software is any kind of software and must be determined which software it is when explaining. And smart devices will have the same limitation, but more defined for smartphones, smartwatches, and computers specifically. Now that I've defined my terms and set the parameters, I will continue to move on to the arguments in support of my proposition. Microsoft's software is the only option when talking about the usefulness of applications in the business world. In the article, Can Pages and Numbers Replace Word and Excel on Your Mac? Chris Walk explains, Word has become an industry standard and many people have come to rely on the docs format. This is especially true in industries like publishing. Pages can export documents in this format, but if you're working with someone and going to be sending docs files back and forth, you're probably going to need Word. For our generation, this is monumental, with us constantly having to work on paper, using Word or Pages, using Word or Pages for Apple, and not being able to convert this to a docs file. Pages virtually become useless in the world of business and learning. The Student Resource Center for D2L actually explains, currently D2L assignment folders do not support the preview and reading of Apple Pages, Keynote, and Numbers native files. Pages, Keynote, and Numbers all support exporting to Microsoft Office formats, including Word, PowerPoint, and Excel formats. This explains even though Apple can run Microsoft documents, they have to save into a page format, causing issues when submitting the work, and it becomes tedious and kind of generates this issue where Apples aren't viable to anybody when it comes to learning websites. Another issue with Apple is that they're not focused on being the best. They just want to push as much product onto consumers as possible. Adam Wong writes in the article, Apple versus Microsoft. As you can see, Microsoft's business model is more diversified and generates revenues from a wider breadth of sources. Windows and Office, probably two of Microsoft's most well-known products, remain the world's most dominant desktop operating system, and the Office productivity software, respectively, to this day. This details that Microsoft, although may not be the prettiest, most sellable system, it is the strongest and most reliable and most relied on software to this day. Wong also includes in the article, as you can tell straight away, iPhone remains Apple's crown jewel and largest revenue contributor. There is no surprise as iPhone remains the most popular smartphone brand around the world. The success of each version of the iPhone will continue to play a major role in Apple's financial performance. This continues to describe how Apple is not a contender when it comes to software. They just have the ability to create devices that are super sellable and then selling them to the public. Finally, Microsoft is universally compatible with any kind of operating software, whereas Apple must run on OS. SMY IT Services explained in their article, Apple versus Microsoft. Here's our comparison that Microsoft is more open in this regard, allowing Microsoft Windows to be installed virtually on any hardware. As a result of this, you have more flexibility in the type of device you want to use. This describes the fact of the matter with Microsoft users are not limited to a single type of device, rather any device that will work with that operating system, which is almost every device. In the article, Apple or Microsoft, here's our comparison. SMYIT also explains Microsoft released a version for this Mac, and it looks very similar to the Windows version. This means that well-known software such as Microsoft Office can be used on Apple devices. For more unique specialized programs, Apple users might have a hard time finding one compatible with an Apple Mac, which means that Apple needed to use Microsoft on their devices to be able to have any say in the business world, while sacrificing their software to allow Microsoft to be the most compatible, and the most expanded software to this day. So today I've covered the definition of key terms in my proposition, the parameters of those key terms and application in some sort of proposition. Microsoft is the most compatible and the most useful software of the two tech giants, Microsoft and Apple. Knowing that using a Microsoft application will already give you a leg up on competition, are you still going to use Apple when creating documents for school or work? Are you still going to use the software or are you going to use the software that was made for sharing documents, Microsoft